What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Here's my 7th attempt to film this video, but today we're going to be talking about a film that I was very excited to check out incredibly early before its release on April 26th of 2024, and that film is called Challengers. Directed by Luca Guadagnino and written by Justin Kuritsky, this film stars people like Zendaya, Mike Faist, Josh O'Connor, and more. So when I got the email that I was going to be able to check this out a little bit over a month before its release, I was pretty surprised by that. More often than not, these press invites to come and check out a movie early or about a week to 2 weeks max ahead of the film's release. And so this was actually quite different in the world of press screenings. And they gave me a little bit over a week until the embargo lifted to actually do a review here on the channel. So I got some time to kind of let my thoughts on the movie marinate, which I actually really enjoy. I didn't have to compete to quickly get a video out just to try to get some views. So I got to kind of sit on my thoughts on the movie. And going into it, based on the trailer, it seemed like it was going to be dramatic, thrilling. I like a good sports film with a competitive edge. And then you add in the fact that there's a bit of a love triangle in the mix. It seemed like it was going to be seedy and raunchy and just have a lot of betrayal and mistrust and all the things you need for a good dramatic story. And the basic gist of this film, for anybody who's not familiar, is that it has to do with tennis. It is essentially, the best way I could describe it, a tennis drama that has a love triangle in the mix. We focus on characters played by Zendaya, Mike Faist, and Josh O'Connor, and we learn pretty quickly, and you can see it in the trailer, that Zendaya's character was a very talented tennis player. She had everything going right for her. She was very competitive. She was very strong, ruthless on the court, and unfortunately ends up suffering a knee injury that puts her out. And now she's kind of taken on the role of being a coach for her husband, played by Mike Faist, Art Donaldson, and he's kind of in a weird place now. He used to love playing tennis, but now he just kind of feels like he's only doing it to satisfy the fact that Zendaya's character can no longer do it, and she puts a lot of pressure on him. He's falling out of love with it, even though he's become a very successful name in that world. And even though Art Donaldson has kind of made a name for himself in tennis, he's kind of well known for being a very talented tennis player, he decides to kind of become a surprise guest at a challengers tennis kind of competition where essentially you play smaller tennis players or people who are trying to rise in the ranks. And so he kind of shows up as a surprise player, and amidst that is reintroduced to the character played by Josh O'Connor, Patrick Zweig. And we learned pretty quickly that the two of them had history. They used to actually be partners in the world of tennis, and they had a falling out. The film kind of, over the course of the movie, depicts that falling out. We get to learn more about their story, but they're being reunited after all these years in a challengers match, and we learned pretty quickly over the course of time that there was a bit of a love triangle between Zendaya's character as well as Mike Faist and Josh O'Connor. And that's the base gist. You have a love triangle, you got a competitor that's coming to meet an old competitor after all this time. There was a falling out in the past, and over the course of the film, via flash forwards and flashbacks, we get the story kind of told to us. We get to learn more about the three of them, their dynamic, how they all came to be friends, how romances started to bloom, blossom, and how certain things started to crumble in those relationships. And now you have this drama with a lot of competition in the middle of it. There's a lot of jealousy, there's a lot of angst, there's a lot of raunchiness, there's a lot of ruthlessness, and that's the base overall vibe of this film. And what I can really say about this film on an overall technical level is that the performances are fantastic. Zendaya gives probably her most ruthless performance I've ever seen her give, and while she's given a very adult performance in things like Euphoria, I think in a lot of ways she's kind of become this actress that a lot of people expect to be cutesy and enjoyable or cool in something like Dune. And in the case of this film, she is playing a ruthless character who absolutely cares about nothing else other than tennis. And you see that struggle in her relationship with the character of Art Donaldson. She's really just this character who puts tennis and the competition of it all above everybody and anything in her life. Everything in her life takes the back seat in comparison to tennis. And so we see that through Zendaya's performance really, really well. I think she does a great job throughout the course of the film playing this incredibly ruthless character who's engaging to watch, but oftentimes incredibly frustrating to watch throughout the course of the film. Then I think that Mike Faist does a great job as a character of Art Donaldson. Here's this character who loved the game of tennis. He made a name for himself, but it's starting to feel like it's the only thing that's keeping his wife around. He's not necessarily excited to push forward anymore. He doesn't really care to play tennis anymore. He's happy with the success he's got, and he just wants to live a happy life with his wife, his daughter, and just kind of live with the success that he's had. But instead he feels this pressure from his wife to continually perform. If not, maybe she'll leave him. And then you have the character of Patrick Zweig, played by Josh O'Connor. Again, as I mentioned, he had a bit of a history with Mike Faist's character. They used to be partners, but he didn't make it to that same level of success. So now he feels like he has something to prove, while also feeling like he wants to try to be a snake and try to get to Zendaya's heart, or at least try to screw over his former partner. So amidst all this, you have this very seedy love triangle that's filled with dramas, thrills, sexiness, and all kinds of debauchery. And overall, what I can say about this film is it was just very well made. The performances were great. There was fantastic cinematography throughout the course of the film. There are great moments in the actual tennis matches where the cinematography is kind of focused on the viewpoint of the tennis players. There's other times where the camera is the ball as it's going back and forth. There are moments of intensity. There's great close-up shots as well, where we're right there. You can almost smell the sweat off of these guys as they're in an intense match of tennis throughout the course of the film. And there's just so many great uses of camera work, as well as a great accompanying score that kind of feels like something like a synth score that you would hear in the late 80s and early 90s. Overall, the overall look, feel, and vibe, the characters, everything about this film I thought was very well crafted and made for a very engaging and exciting movie to watch as the movie progressed. Now, if I had to lean into any of my negatives, as I mentioned, we learn about the story of these characters through flash forwards and flashbacks, and a lot of times it did get a little bit messy. After the movie ended, I sat around talking to some of the other critics that were there to check out the movie early, and they all kind of had a similar outlook on the film. There's times where we'll jump months back, then it'll say 15 minutes before, then it'll say 15 minutes later, then it'll say 30 minutes later, then it'll say 3 years in the past, then it'll say 4 years in the future. And there's times where it just feels a little bit jarring and you don't necessarily know where you are, and you kind of have to focus on the relationships that are in those moments, as well as different characters' haircuts, to kind of know where you are in time. It doesn't necessarily give you a timestamp to show you the years or anything like that. It'll just pop up saying 3 months before, 3 months in the past, 15 minutes later. Sometimes it's literally down to minutes or hours, and then other times it's up to months or years. And sometimes it just made it a bit jarring. It felt a little bit all over the place. I can appreciate a non-linear story that utilizes flashbacks and flash forwards to tell our story, but at times I did feel like it got a little bit messy, and it did take away from the overall enjoyment of just seeing a story play out. Outside of that, my only other really big gripe in this film would be the ending, and I think it's going to depend on your personal taste. On one end, I actually really enjoyed the ending. I thought that it was a pretty solid ending. I think that they set it up very well for a very clever ending, and it kind of just rolls into credits and just asks you to accept that as the ending. On another hand, there's so much that's going on with the characters throughout the course of the film that it never really feels like there's full-on closure of the story by the time we get to the end. There is and there isn't. If you've seen the movie, whenever you watch this review, if you're watching it down the line and the movie's already come out, then you know that the movie does a great job of earlier in the film kind of setting up the way that this film ends in a very clever way. But it kind of felt like it just ended abruptly, and there were still so many threads of the film that I was really intrigued to see play out that ultimately just don't ever get touched on. And on one hand, it kind of leaves this sense of ambiguity for you as an audience member to wonder what happened after the credits started rolling. On another hand, as somebody who likes to see story play out, while we were jumping around in time throughout the course of the film, I almost wish that we had less of that going on and more of a more conclusive ending, especially around some of the choices that our characters make in the latter half of the film. But if you can already tell, I was really impressed by the filmmaking here. I was impressed by the cast. I think, again, Zendaya gives one of the most ruthless performances throughout the course of the film, and I think both Mike Faist and Josh O'Connor give fantastic performances as well. The three of them are great. There was a great seedy, very dramatic love triangle at the center of all this. There's that great competitive edge from a sports movie that you want to see. There's mistrust, there's betrayal, there's heartbreak, there's turmoil, there's a whole lot going on in this film. And I just think when it comes down to an overall level, I found this to be a very impressive film that I think is going to really surprise a lot of audience members. But like I said, I do think that sometimes that jumping around was a little bit jarring, and I do think there are moments in this film that might be a little bit too slow for some, but this is definitely the most kind of ruthless that we've ever seen Zendaya, and that alone is worth going to check out the movie. So that's going to be my thoughts on Challengers. I hope you guys enjoyed the review, and if you're planning to check this movie out, let me know down below. Is this something that's on your radar? Are you looking forward to this? Is it a movie that you're not planning on seeing? And if you're watching this review way down the line, you already saw the movie and you just kind of wanted to hear somebody ramble about it, definitely let me know down below. Did you like this movie? Did you not like this movie? Whatever the case may be, leave any and all comments down below, and I'll see you beautiful people in the next one. Bye-bye.